The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Friday, April 8th, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,239.45 an ounce, silver $15.36 an ounce, Texas crude $37.26 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 419 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1943, then U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt, in Executive Order 9328, froze all wages and prices, prohibited workers from changing jobs unless the war effort called for it, and barred rate increases to common carriers and public utilities. All this interventionism was allowed in order to freeze inflation, which is itself caused by intervening in the money supply. FDR froze the economy. Today in history. In recent news, Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas had a shooting today involving 2 airmen who were killed. As of now, it appears media outlets at the scene are reporting that an airman shot his commanding officer and then himself. 2 Glocks were found at the site. The U.S. Air Force said in a statement that this was a workplace violence incident and not a result of a terrorist attack, while the Bexar County Sheriff's Office did describe the deaths as a likely murder-suicide case. It's still uncertain how the Glocks made it on base, however, since individuals, including military personnel, are not allowed to carry weapons on site unless they are in security forces or the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Inmates at 7 different state prisons across Texas launched a work strike this week. It seems inmates refused to leave their cells, prompting all 7 prisons to put their entire facilities on lockdown. According to the Incarcerated Workers Organization Committee, or IWOC, the problem in Texas is that prison labor does not contribute towards their parole considerations, the compensation which doesn't even add up to cover the inmates' $100 copay associated with their medical expenses, and the heat they're put through in the Lone Star State can be deadly. The IWOC is also calling for 60% of the 180,000 prisoner laborers, which adds up to about 100,000 jobs, should be given back to the citizenry, which would alleviate unemployment in the state. Keep in mind that prison workers receive no benefits, no disability compensation, no Social Security, and no overtime pay. The Prison Policy Initiative, a nonprofit and nonpartisan research institute, describes the $2 billion annual prison industrial industry as nothing less than legal slavery. The list of fixes and grievances can be seen on the IWOC webpage. This is Rick Rohde with your lowdown for April 8th, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the walls. The chair is against the walls. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I have a joke for you.
Okay.
The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently. You thought you'd see it coming. The moment you how they cut the coins with their food.
Bitcoin is immune from attack almost completely. With Bitcoin, you actually gain far more from using that computing power to generate Bitcoin.
There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast if it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Crypto Show, a show about disruptive technology, currency, and liberty, with a pinch of stick in it to the man. As always, we come to you live from the real heart of the resistance in Austin, Texas, deep beneath the Chase Bank, with a stack of Bitcoin miners at our back, undermining the bank and the man. We bring to you the latest info from those hacking away at the digital revolution and having some fun while we do it.
Lasers.
I don't have any lasers.
Hacking away at the digital revolution with lasers.
You betcha.
You betcha. Well, welcome, guys, to the Crypto Show. Another lovely episode. If you're listening to us now, you're listening live as we come to you on this lovely Sunday, April 17th, 2016. Here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you as always by our sponsors, Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And if you weren't lucky enough, as well as Crypto Compare, We're going to have a News Minute sponsored by Crypto Compare coming up in just a second. But I wanted to add that if you weren't lucky enough to be at Brave New Books last night, there was a fun event. Basically,
It was held in our honor.
it was held in, the Crypto Show's honor. We weren't even here. No, but what was the event? It was basically to show everyone the new studio, right? How it's kind of been cleaned up and revamped. We it's not just the Crypto Show anymore out of the studio. It's also Be Brave Radio, about your health.
Although the Crypto Show is the only one that matters.
Well, the Crypto Show is the only one that matters, as if it needed to be said. Right. They know this, Danny. That's why they're listening right now. But Burke Superfoods with Ryan Mutzel and the Voice of Reason. And they're also
the official suppliers of John McAfee's favorite bath salts.
Are you going to post that at some point?
Yeah.
You really should. That was pretty awesome. God, he looks good. I feel like he looks younger than I am, and he's twice my age. But they're also doing a contest for naming the studio, and I'm not sure if that actually completed or not. You maybe can still submit suggestions.
I think they came up with a name, but we have our own, so whatever.
Yeah, and that's all that matters. It's a secret one that we only share after certain passcripts and passwords have been exchanged between two people.
You have to show us your private key first.
Exactly. Some of us don't have private keys. We only have private wallets or something. Anyway, we're very excited about our guests coming up after the News Minute. Our first guest is going to be Philip Fata. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly. Maybe not. I'll check with him momentarily. He is the non-executive member of the board of directors of Fermat. And if you listen to our last episode with Tatiana Moros, who may also be calling in, by the way, after the half hour, it is a really cool app that she is using for her sort of media world, and we'll find out more about him, what Fermat does. In the second hour, we're also going to have a very lovely woman from Florida. She's an attorney. What was her name, Dave?
Shannon Stallings.
Shannon Stallings, and she involves herself in a number of cases concerning marijuana possession and related quote unquote crime. So really excited to talk to her. Well, let's get to the Crypto Show News Minute, brought to you by Crypto Compare. Shapeshift hack an inside job. Shapeshift CEO Eric Voorhees has said that they now believe the hack on their hot wallet system last week was an inside job by a former employee whose name and position was not disclosed. The refunds for transactions lost due to the hack are still not being returned in order to avoid fraud, despite promises that they would do so within 24 hours. Airbnb affirms no Bitcoin plans. Airbnb have reaffirmed that they have no Bitcoin plans after their acquisition of developers from ChangeTip. The ChangeTip company investors of Pantera Capital and Blockchain Capital are still looking to auction the company's remaining assets. Blockchain investment fund raising $100 million. A new fund founded by technology consultant Chris Skinner and Singapore-based venture capital firm Life Sreda are looking to raise $100 million over the next 2 years to inject into blockchain-based businesses.
You're supposed to put your pinky in your mouth when you say that $100 million.
$100 million.
There you go.
That's my bad. The fund is looking to raise $100 million from mid-sized banks and simultaneously provide them with consulting services on blockchain solutions. Life Sreda, it's Sreda, I may not be pronouncing that correctly either, have already contributed an initial $5 million. So some interesting news in the blockchain Bitcoin space. And we're really excited to have the Crypto News Minute brought to you by Crypto Compare, and we're going to have a second one in the second hour, so stay tuned for that. Pretty cool getting a little update on the Shapeshift hack that we talked about last week. All right, well, let's get to our first guest. As I mentioned before, he is Philip Fata. Phil, am I pronouncing that correctly? How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Philip Fata, so it's good enough.
Okay. Close enough. So Philip, as I mentioned, is with the company Fermat at Fermat.org. He's a non-executive member of the board of directors. He is a financial services digital innovation leader, strategist, and fintech evangelist. He currently serves as a senior managing partner with Gartner Consulting, advising Gartner's largest financial services clients on digital transformation strategy. Prior to Gartner, he led the global financial services innovations practice at Cisco Systems, and before Cisco, he headed a decision science unit at Capital One Financial. He started his career in the United States as a management consultant with McKinsey & Company with a focus on the retail banking and insurance. In addition to his corporate experience, Philip is actively involved in advising and mentoring startups on growth strategies. Philip has commented on the role of innovation in fintech in transforming the payments, retail banking, and wealth management sectors in publications, including American Banker and Bloomberg Business Week. Philip is a featured speaker at global industry forums in the United States, Russia, APJC, and Latin America. Philip holds an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin, that's right here, and a master's degree in computer engineering from Erie France. It's ERIE, France. Ferrat lives in Houston, Texas with his wife and 2 children. And in addition to Fermat, Philip serves on the board of Good Works Houston, a not-for-profit social entrepreneurship accelerator. Philip Ferrat, welcome to the Crypto Show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, very excited to have you on. As I mentioned a moment ago, we got a little, very, very brief introduction to Fermat when we had Tatiana Moroz, Bitcoin and libertarian singer-songwriter, on this past week. And I think anything that Tatiana does is definitely worth something because she's a very talented individual. Well, tell us about Fermat. First of all, the name Fermat, I assume, is that after Pierre de Fermat?
That's correct. It's a reference to the French mathematician who came up with some theorems that were very hard to prove. And I think for the past 200 years, nobody was able to prove his theorem until recently. A British mathematician was able to finally crack the code on it. But yes, that is in reference to this French mathematician.
Yeah, he was a brilliant guy. I actually read a book on Fermat's last theorem and about Andrew Wiles, I believe his name was, the British guy who eventually solved it after 300 years or so of the best minds in math being able to do so. Well, I guess tell us about Fermat, and then why after Pierre de Fermat? How does that relate to what you guys are doing?
So, let me start with Fermat. I mean, many people and listeners are familiar with BitTorrent as a way to share files in a distributed manner without a third party in the middle that anybody can censor or stop. So the idea that Fermat is trying to implement is to create a multi-purpose peer-to-peer network and platform. So essentially, instead of just using it for file sharing or using it to order cab rides or using it to rent available space in your apartment, you can develop on the same platform different applications using the same network, which is decentralized and autonomous, as the way for people to reach each other and to be able to sell, buy, date, whatever the application is. That's the overarching concept that Fermat is trying to implement. And the overarching, if you will, theme that we're using in order to make Fermat understood by a wider audience is the Internet of People. Today you hear quite a bit about the Internet of Things, but we believe that the individual, people are the drivers of the economy, people are the reasons why government exists, people are, at the end of the day, the recipients and the buyers of what corporations build. Yet, if you take a look at what's been happening, to a large extent, people are disenfranchised. They don't have necessarily the control that democracy would want them to have with large governments playing a more active role in managing our day-to-day life. They definitely, when you look at social networks, the information, my info, your info, our digital footprint is what is creating value, yet we're giving it for free in order to access a platform. And then when it comes to the sharing economy, which is kind of the next trend in employment and in jobs, the platforms in the middle are still extracting a significant value of the transaction, routinely between 20-30%. And in some cases, it's warranted because of the value they're adding. In many cases, though, the individuals, both buyers and sellers, are leaving a significant value on the table. And this is what Fermat is trying to address, create a platform for the people, the Internet of People, and enable them to build on this platform different applications, and we can talk a little bit more about those as we progress in this conversation.
That sounds great. What an incredible sounding idea. Unfortunately, we're coming to break, but we'll talk more with Philip Ferrat of Fermat on the other side, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray mace.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely Sunday, April 17th, 2016. Here on Logos Radio Network, and brought to you, as always, by our sponsors, Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, and Crypto Compare, who every Sunday provide us at the top of each hour with our Crypto Compare News Minute.
Not to mention Bitcoin.com, who's also running our ads.
Oh, yeah, Bitcoin.com.
Yeah, we're doing a quid pro quo ad system between them and us.
It's so obvious that we need to thank them that I forget.
Yeah.
But thank you, Roger Ver, Bitcoin.com, for some mutual promotion there.
And for backing me up when I got attacked by the greedy monster.
And that's going to be for a future show. We're working on the approach to discussing that matter. It's an interesting one. Many of you may already be aware, but we'll have a follow-up to that coming real soon.
I can't say don't buy BitClub out loud on air, but I'm going to say it anyway.
I didn't hear what he said, so I'm not party to that or privy to that. I don't know what he said. But anyway, back to
send men with guns. I don't care.
Am I right? Well, back to our guest, Philip Farah of Fermat. I want to say it occurred to me during break. So I read this book, not to get too off subject, but I read a book on Fermat's last theorem, and the guy who discovered the solution. And I'm not a mathematician. Like, I don't understand a lot of this stuff. But
he plays one on TV.
I do play one on TV. That's Dr. Nick. But it's interesting because he solved it using these two math tools, and I remember the names of them, and I don't pretend to understand how they work. But one was elliptic curves, and the other one were these modular operators, which apparently both of those things they discovered earlier in the century were related mathematically. And the reason that's interesting is because, of course, the cryptography that Bitcoin uses is elliptic curve cryptography, and the Fermat app is modular. It can kind of be molded to be whatever you want it to be. So it's kind of very fitting. And so it's sort of the last theorem, if you will, it sounds like, in the space for providing peer-to-peer decentralized technology like this. So you were saying that this is sort of the Internet of People. And I guess elaborate on that a little bit further.
Yeah, so we've been gravitating around this for a while. I think we're seeing a trend where we are starting with a decentralized when you look at, for example, the sharing economy, when you look at what's happening in social networks, where you look at even dating, you're moving towards kind of people being empowered in doing what they want for work, for a living, or for fun, and becoming their own agent. What hasn't happened yet is the platform in the middle becoming decentralized. We're still using very centralized platforms called Facebook or called Uber and a number of others. The next step of this evolution is to decentralize the platform. And I think the two advantages of a decentralized platform, number one, it is much more resistant to controls. So it's very hard to control a platform that does not have one organization or one person. There is no single throat to choke. And the second advantage is obviously the economics of it become much more favorable to the end users. And this is kind of the direction that we are trying to make happen within Fermat.
Yeah, and so this makes a lot of sense. And I've heard this sort of critique, if you will, about the peer-to-peer technology, that it's still not fully decentralized or peer-to-peer, like you said, because we have these intermediaries. And it's true, when you use Airbnb, when you use Uber, when you use Facebook, you have to go to a website. You have to deal with company people behind the website or behind the app who are still largely involved in the direction of the peer-to-peer, of drivers meeting riders, of people finding each other on Facebook and sharing their photos and information and updates and all that. And with Uber too, as well as Airbnb, they get a cut of it. And there's nothing wrong with that because they're adding value. But, Uber takes 20% of your fare, and that's a significant take. Now, if you could find something like Fermat and use it to build something even more decentralized, then that 20% could go to a 10% discount to riders, say, plus a 10% boost in the income of drivers, and everyone's better off. You can basically not just further decentralize it, but further automate the process, and that makes people better off. Would you agree with that statement?
That's very true. And you can still have some central role for operators who want to add value to the process. For example, if you feel more comfortable taking a ride from someone who has gone through an identity check or a validation for safety, if you're sending your son in an Uber-like cab, then you will pay a little bit extra for someone providing the service. If you need a central party to do some, political lobbying to get Uber accepted in Austin, then you might be willing to pay a little bit more for these services. So there is still a place for operators in the middle who want to add value, but then you're putting back the control in the hand of the end users as of, how much they are paying in exchange for this value. So we're going to see the value chain, instead of being one block today, you're going to see a disaggregation of this value chain and a different share of the revenue based on true value added in the middle.
Absolutely. And so it's not, it's about competition, and it's about not just competition of companies, but letting ideas compete. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything will go to fully sort of automated, decentralized Fermat-like applications, although it could. But, it could be that Fermat-like applications have a big role to play, perhaps the largest role to play. Well, like he said, because of certain preferences for companies with guys in the middle, they will still be there to provide whatever added value that they provide. And it's a trade-off. You might get that added value, but you might pay more, or you might have less privacy in doing so. So,
are there any limitations on promoting these apps, like on iTunes or Google Play? Any of that, as far as getting traction?
So, as you can imagine, these apps are going to be running on mobile phones. So, mobile is the platform of preference. And the need for a network in the middle is to be able to get around the difficulty today for you to receive using your mobile for someone to connect you from the outside. If you have a mobile app and you're not connected to a central server, the idea of you receiving app calls does not work in the current structure of the technology. This is why the Fermat is creating this intermediary network. Once you connect to the network, different apps will be able to get across this network and be able to reach you. There are some examples of players, Facebook being one, trying a similar approach now on the mobile. And this is the direction that we're following. And, the proof is in the pudding, or the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we'll see how that goes once the app is out.
I haven't heard that one. That's good.
That's good. I like it. Well, we got about a minute and a half till break, but I wanted to ask you, I'd heard recently a criticism, not of Fermat, but of sort of this idea of fully sort of automating and decentralizing. While the person who had the criticism was for this advance in technology, they questioned whether lacking that intermediary and lacking maybe some profit incentive on the part of someone in the middle, that say problems that arose might not be addressed as quickly or as easily, or it might not be as innovative. Do you have any response to that?
Yeah, as I said, Fermat does not preclude having someone in the middle, but it gives you the choice of using someone in the middle or not. So it's number one. Number two, it depends on the use case. If you're selling available space in front of your house for whoever is coming to watch the next basketball game nearby, then you probably don't need an intermediary. If you're offering something that is highly dependent on the background checks of the person that you're going to be working with, then perhaps you want the intermediary. So we're going to see different use cases, some that work better with intermediaries, some that don't. But the presence of an intermediary in Fermat is possible. It's not precluded by the platform.
Okay,
it just gives you the choice.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Well, we're talking with Philip Farah of Fermat. We'll be talking with him and Tatiana Moroz on the other side, so stay tuned. We'll be right back on The Crypto Show.
When you surf the internet, you may get the false impression that you're alone, but advertisers are likely to be watching, and a Gallup poll says we don't like it one bit. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back to tell you more in just a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This public service announcement is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
According to a new Gallup poll, most Americans are not aware they're being tracked and profiled as they surf the internet, but they clearly hate the idea. Researchers ask internet users if advertisers should be allowed to customize online ads to match the websites they visited. 67% said no. Nevertheless, advertisers continue their stealthy ways. Here are 3 tips to stop the snooping. Number 1, stick to privacy-friendly websites when possible, especially for web searches. Your search terms reveal a lot about you, like your interests and your medical conditions. Number 2, delete tracking cookies. And number 3, visit websites through a proxy, like the one at StartPage.com. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time. Take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter?
New York. Some days you just don't have that clarity of speech as you do other days. Just doing my speech drills. That I should keep off air, actually. Welcome back, guys, to the Crypto Show. Again, it is Sunday, April 17th, 2016. And
it'll work better for you after a couple more beers.
Exactly. And we're speaking with Philip Farah of Fermat. You go to Fermat or Fermat as a French ignorant English speaker would say, fermat.org, to check out their website and information about them. And we're about to have Tatiana Moroz on the line to talk about her experience with Fermat. We're really excited to have her back on and to find out what she has to say about it. But Philip, we were just talking off air. You were mentioning how long has Fermat been around? And you have an announcement coming up, you said.
Yep. So Fermat has been in stealth mode since April 2014. And this coming week, we're going to go public with a press announcement. So around April 20, please expect something in the major media channels and Fermat going public.
That's excellent. Your announcement should be something like, Fermat has a major announcement, but it can't fit in the margins of this page. Like from Pierre de Fermat himself.
Right.
Anyway, bad joke.
And many people think that going stealth, have we been doing anything? And I just was mentioning to you that we have now about 60 developers on GitHub, and people can go and check the project who have been working very actively. So contrary to many crypto projects where you end up with an idea and white paper with not much behind it to back it up, I think we followed the opposite direction. And so you're going to see significant development by the time we go public. And I think October is the big launch around the October timeframe.
October, that's about 6 months away. That's exciting, not very long from now. And you're right. I mean, 60 developers on GitHub, that's pretty impressive. I'm not even sure Bitcoin has that many people working on it. So that's really awesome. And of course, you can find the white paper at fermat.org and also a GitHub link there too to check out all the work that's been going on there. And I believe we have Tatiana Moroz on the line. Tatiana, are you there?
Yes, I am. How's it going, guys?
Pretty good. Welcome back to the show. We just can't get rid of you.
Just to clarify, Tatiana, you can't hear from Philip, right?
He hasn't tried saying anything, so I don't think so. But
I was hearing you, Tatiana, so I don't know if you can hear me.
Okay.
Can you hear him? Okay.
All right. So, yeah, we'll have a slight problem there. Sorry.
Oh, can she not hear him?
She can't hear him, but.
Okay. Well, we'll relay messages, working out the little kinks there. Well, Tatiana, welcome back. We can't seem to get rid of you, as I was about to say.
Oh, God.
Just kidding.
She's going to hang up.
I'm kidding. She knows we love her. Well, thanks for coming back on the show, Tatiana. Real quick, by the way, how was your, I regret missing it. I got busy. How was your performance last night?
It was good. My voice is still a little scratchy, but it was cool, and it was really nice to see how much progress they made at the shop. I mean, the studio, what are we calling it? The Brave Cave now?
Oh, is that what they decided on, the Brave Cave?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep, the Brave Cave.
I love it. Who came up with that?
Me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just taking credit.
It was me. No, I wanted to call it Studio 1984, but whatever.
That was a good one, too, but I like Brave Cave.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. I really regret not making it, but I'm glad you had fun. I'm glad it was a good outing and performance, and we'll catch you on the next time you're in town. Well, of course, we have Philip Farah of Fermat on, and you mentioned that on the last episode when you were on with us. So tell us about your experience with it. You just barely briefly touched on it when we had you on, but fill it out for us. Tell us about your experience with it.
Well, I had heard about Fermat when I was in the Latin American Bitcoin conference down in Mexico City, and I met Luis there, and he and I, we got along, and he ended up telling me about the project in a very unusual location, because he hadn't told me about it, maybe because he could sense I don't always want to hear about crypto stuff all day long. But anyway, he told me, at the corner of this pyramid, which is, I guess, the third largest pyramid in the world, and he told me about the project, and I had my fair share of sketchy projects in the space of Liberty and sort of, very idealistic projects. Of course, I'm drawn to projects that are idealistic, but I also have a little bit of wariness about it. So for about, 3 or 4 weeks, he really tried to butter me up and show me that it wasn't a scam. And eventually, I kind of followed on with it, and I joined the project in January. And while I've been introducing Luis to a lot of interesting people, including Philip, one of the main ways that we're also working together is he's working with Tokenly to help create my Artist Coin app.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. So yeah, so you're really, you've benefited a lot from your association with these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a good thing because, it gives them a use case. It gives me something, I had never really thought of making an app before. And Luis sort of had an original approach to that. And then him and Adam Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin, of course, they spoke. And yeah, I was like, so Adam, is this guy sketchy or what? He's like, no, it's okay. I'm like, all right, well, let's do this then. So we should have that ready probably in about the next month. And overall, it's really interesting to be working with so many cool people. And what I find really cool about it is that I can bring in different people from the space. I'm not limited to working with, a wallet or an exchange. There's a lot of creativity that could be brought into expanding the community and finding different projects that can benefit.
Right. There's a lot of versatility to this app because it's so sort of open-ended and modular. It's not just, crypto wallet. It's not just, peer-to-peer sharing app. It's all of those potentially. And that's the beauty of it. And so you're talking about Luis Fernando Molina, obviously the CEO and founder, when you talk about Luis.
Yes, that's correct.
And I have to say,
you guys will have to have him on in a couple of weeks or something. Maybe once the project launches, he'll be like, why are all these guys going on?
I know, right? I like his picture. I mean, he looks very suave with the dark glasses and the long hair. I trust him just based on that. No, I definitely, it's a good quite a testament.
I think it would be something really good for this network to have an app or something.
No,
it needs something like that.
No, I think so. I think a lot of people would benefit. I was talking with the owner of a local a big chain here. I won't say what. We might have him on the show in the future. I have to talk to you about that. I kind of already did.
Is this a BDSM thing or what?
Yes. Okay.
All right.
But he was. I told him I've been telling him about Bitcoin, how he needs to accept it, and he's kind of interested. He's talking about getting an app, but he was complaining about how expensive it was. And something like this could reduce the cost of making an app for his business substantially. And so I'm really excited to tell him about this next time I talk to him. Well, Philip, I wanted to ask you, since I know your full launch isn't until October, but of course, Tatiana is, through her work with you guys, is going to have her stuff hopefully by next month. Are there other groups or individuals you would want to mention who are already utilizing Fermat or working with you guys and have their own projects in the works?
There are a couple of groups that are kind of in the beta testing with Fermat. I'm going to wait until the announcement next week for those to be discussed. But what I want to tell you is that the idea that we are pursuing so far is very similar to someone developing a mall. And when you create a mall, you start looking initially for these anchor stores. So the key stores that are going to draw customers to the mall. And once you have these anchor stores, then you have critical mass and you can create many, many additional stores. So if you guys are onto something, it's a good time to start discussing being part of these anchor stores, and we should have this discussion offline.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm definitely down with that. I think we could benefit here at the show, as well as at Brave New Books.
You say critical mass. That seemed to be a problem with Lazoos. I know, it's available here in Austin, but it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
When we were in New York City, we actually tried to use it, and it was available, but there was no one there driving.
Yeah. And that's go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the beauty of a multi-purpose platform, is that you're not betting all of your cash on one application, or all of your Bitcoins on one application. And if it doesn't work, then you're out of luck. It's almost a creative destruction process. You can enable many applications, and then some would survive, some won't. But the platform has a much higher chance of survival as a result. So that's
absolutely.
One thing.
We'll be right back with our guests on the other side.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely Sunday, April 17th, 2016. Why are you laughing at me? I'm out of breath just from going to the other room.
Yeah.
We are talking with our guest, Tatiana Moros. Is she back on the line?
Mm-hmm.
And Philip Farah of Fermat, Fermat.org. Check it out. It's basically sort of versatile, general purpose, modular way to create peer-to-peer decentralized apps. And like Philip was saying as we were coming to break, the advantage of it over, say, something like Lazuz, which Danny brought up, was a good example. Well, Lazuz is a good idea, a great idea. In fact, I don't doubt that it's been marvelously executed as far as the technology and whatnot. It's sort of putting all one's eggs in one basket. And especially difficult to do when you have entrenched large challengers or incumbents, if you will, in the market like Uber and Lyft, who already have the network effect of a lot of riders and drivers. So it's hard to compete in that respect. But you're also limiting yourself to one narrow focus. And while, of course, that can have its advantages depending, the advantage of Firma is you can, say, create a ride-sharing app or a social media app. You can, whatever you can imagine that already exists or doesn't exist.
I could set up apps for customers and charge them a service just for using Firma.
Yeah, absolutely. Or maybe you could have one multi-purpose app that does ride-sharing, social media, and God knows what. Basically, the possibilities are endless.
I could sell myself as a cheap app builder and just use it.
Or you go from a cheap house builder to a cheap app builder. Yeah, it kind of works. But it's a pretty marvelous technology, and we're really excited for its launch, for its full launch coming in October.
And Tatiana was also discussing another app as well.
Was this related to?
Tatiana, go ahead and explain the other app that you were talking about.
I just want to say though, Philip, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Want to make sure. Now, Philip did mention, I know you couldn't hear him. I had asked him about other apps that were maybe in the works, and he said he probably was going to wait till the launch to discuss some of those. So I don't know if that's one of the apps you're thinking of.
No, Tatiana was discussing one.
Oh, okay, it's different?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, Tatiana, go ahead.
I think we dropped Tatiana on Skype. So
okay.
I don't see her anymore. Maybe we should try her again.
Yeah, we'll get her back on. Well, Philip, tell us too, how did you become involved with Firma?
Tatiana is the guilty one who brought me into this into this kind of development. I've met Tatiana. We're discussing the next horizon of applications, and she mentioned this new platform that she really was excited about. And I decided it makes lots of sense from a business perspective to build something like that. The key question was, how much was done, how much was realistic, and is the team that you want to be working with? And so I realized pretty quickly that it's a very interesting team, good people, and also very distributed across the planet. And people coming together, working on this application because of their belief that something can come out of it. And I became a convert myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already converts ourselves too in the brief discussion we've had. And it is kind of, in a way, Firma was inevitable because it's sort of the eventual trend in all industries. This sort of not just peer-to-peer decentralized, but sort of automated, modular, versatile platform. Like, for instance, I think it's pretty clear that in the future, at some point, we're not going to have drivable cars, or we probably still will, hopefully, unless the government steps in and makes it illegal or something. But we're going to have automated driverless cars that people rely on to go to work and school and all that sort of stuff. And people may not even own a car. Or you have stuff like with website development. While there are still, of course, plenty of web developers out there who will custom make websites for people, and there's definite advantages to that. You have a lot of web development platforms that are sort of akin to Firma in that they can allow anyone to sort of custom make their own website from scratch. They have a lot of the processes automated. You don't necessarily have to know HTML or C++ or PHP or whatever to build a website. Now with certain stuff like that, you can design any kind of website with a pre-made tool, and that's kind of the direction I think a lot of industries are going. And Firma, I think, is just the latest and greatest example of that. Would you agree with that?
I would. And if you look at the economy, and one of my key passions has been what is the next generation of jobs for people around the world in an automated environment where robots and artificial intelligence are gaining traction. The reality is we don't know exactly how things are going to evolve. But what we know is that there is a lot of talent out there, people who want to be independent, who want to contribute to the economy and do things that they like doing versus follow processes that have been created in the 70s that could be automated by machines. And that results in the need for a flexible platform where you can sell the type of digital content that you create, the type of services that you can provide in ways that we don't know exactly how it would work. The sharing economy is only an initial example of how this works. And I think Fermat offers this opportunity, and I think it will change quite a bit over time. But the importance of a platform like this is to help in unleashing this talent that large corporations or the government cannot necessarily unleash for us. So, one of the key things, and maybe we'll discuss it at some point, is really the appetite for the government to enable these platforms and to see the positive that can come of them, rather than kind of looking at some of these peer-to-peer platforms as just risks and things that need to be stopped or very heavily monitored.
Right, just like you mentioned with Uber and Lyft here in Austin, it's really bizarre that a tech-heavy, relatively open-minded city like Austin, the city council wanted to step in and impose restrictions on Uber and Lyft, especially when those restrictions involved background checks that they were already doing. So the government is definitely a potential impediment to technologies like this.
With that situation, basically, the city wanted to be the ones doing it.
Right.
Yeah. They wanted to be in control of that.
Right, but it's just they don't need to be. And if anything, they're going to put it on taxpayers. Uber and Lyft should pay for the background checks, which they already do. That's what free markets are, is they internalize those costs the way it should be. But anyway, so I guess with that said, do you foresee government intervention in Fermat? Do you see government roadblocks to Fermat's development or applications based on it?
Well, let me tell you, we've been thinking quite a bit about geography. Where are we going to locate the not-for-profit? Where are we going to locate some of the for-profit entities that people will build over Fermat? And it would be ideal to be able to do it in the U.S. Yet, if you look at some of the recent examples, whether it's the government fighting Apple to open its phones to and remove any privacy, or if it is what we've seen with Ross Ulbricht in Silk Road, have an idealist trying to create a P2P platform that gets crucified. It's time for the government to realize that innovation is moving in this direction, and that at some point they're not going to be fighting people. They're going to be fighting decentralized applications running on their own. And so, anything that can be done to give
an autonomous army.
An autonomous army. So anything that can be done to kind of give incentives for innovation to happen in the U.S. should be done, and the government needs to catch up with the trend and to get ahead of it, and we're not seeing that yet.
Yeah, we're not, and that's the sad part. And America historically has had the reputation for free markets and innovation and open-mindedness, and of course that's true to some extent. But it was never quite as true as the propaganda always said, and of course it's increasingly not true. And because the government won't allow innovation to improve people's lives, or at least to the extent that it doesn't, it gives other countries an advantage. And I'm not against other countries taking these opportunities and enriching themselves and bettering themselves. That's great. But it could also go to us, and we could be the leader in it if the government would just step away. But that's the way it goes. Well, we've got about 2 minutes left. Philip Farah of Fermat is on with us. And Philip, I guess for the last 2 minutes, do you have any parting thoughts for us?
Yeah, like how can someone get involved with it? Where can they go, and how can they build their own app?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so I'll point to the fact that one of the key advantages of the platform is that it is modular and monetizable. So you can build an application on it, or parts of an application called components, and anybody who wants to reuse it so that they don't have to recreate the wheel every time they build a new app, you will get paid for it through what we call micro-use licenses. It's a new model that kind of fosters innovation and collaboration. There are a number of developers out there. We're going to spend more time explaining it to the public this coming week. And then between Tatiana, myself, Luis, if you want to get, if you're more interested in a specific app, please reach out to us. GitHub is a fantastic area for developers and analysts to participate in this project. And they can reach us through that. And then there is so much potential to develop new apps that we're not limited by the talent that we're expecting. So feel free to reach out, either GitHub or Tatiana, myself, or Luis.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of opportunity out there for people to get involved. They will be doing their full launch in October, and you can go to Fermat, fermat.org to find out more about Philip Farah and Luis. Luis Fernando Molina, thank you. I couldn't remember for a second. The CEO and founder. And, of course, Tatiana Moroz at TatianaMoroz.com. Well, Philip, we really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure, and we'll have you back on soon, and we'll be back with our next guest on the other side.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, guys, to the second hour of the Crypto Show here on this lovely Sunday, April 17th, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network. Brought to you, as always, by our sponsors, Brave New Books, and Hill Country Home Improvements, Carl's Jr., and Crypto Compare.
That's what I was waiting for, Carl's Jr.
I can't believe I left them out. They're our biggest sponsor by far. Carl's
not only
Jr.
that, last week when we had Tatiana on, I think that to date she still believes that we are sponsored by Carl's Jr.
She would. No, I'm just kidding. I would love to be sponsored by Carl's Jr. I think
I know,
they're pretty
right?
good. I'm sorry.
Great fries.
I wouldn't even take money. I would just take, free burgers for life.
Somehow I believe you.
Well, let's get back. Before we get to our next guest, let's finish up with our second half of the Crypto Show News Minute, brought to you by Crypto Compare.
Is that where they compare crypto?
Yes.
Okay.
How'd you know? It's crazy.
Just check.
I see. Estonian Supreme Court tightens digital currency laws. The Estonian Supreme Court has made a ruling that is unfavorable to Bitcoin and digital asset trading by enforcing strict AML laws. The case has its roots in Bitcoin trader Devogd, D-E-V-O-G-D, European VAT clarification late last year that went to the European Court of Justice. Despite Estonia's friendly face with respect to most blockchain technology, they have been accused of being too restrictive in their approach. UK FCA regulatory sandbox for fintech companies. The UK Financial Conduct Authority has paved the way for further innovation in the space by announcing a regulatory sandbox for fintech firms and specifically digital currencies. The sandbox will allow normal FCA rules to be waived and give companies individual tailored advice from the regulator. The regulation is seen as lowering the cost of doing business in the UK, as well as a comfort to early stage companies that they're not in the firing line of unforeseen if unforeseen circumstances should occur. The normal civil and criminal liability laws will still apply. Ethereum Energy Trade First. Two Brooklyn residents have become the first people to sell energy directly to each other using the Ethereum blockchain. The trade was facilitated by L03 Technology and Consensus, CONSENSYS, allowed excess photovoltaic energy to be sold at a premium rate. And for the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency price roundup, with alt markets rattled by Shapeshift's ongoing problems, Ethereum is at a topsy-turvy week with volumes not overly high and sometimes weak, letting the price hit lows of 0.0165 Bitcoin per Ether, and at present hitting highs of 0.0225 Bitcoin per Ether. Bitcoin has been gradually shaking out of its doldrums, although also on weak volumes, as the price climbed to over $430 for the first time since early March. The price has pulled back towards the end of the weekend, though, to the safety of $425. And that was another Crypto News Minute brought to you by Crypto Compare. Thanks to those guys over there. Crypto Compare, thanks to those guys over there.
Because we surely don't know what's going on.
That's for sure. I'm going to start doing jingles. I think I got a talent for it.
No, you don't.
No, I don't. Well, let's get to our second guest. I do want to thank again Tatiana Moroz for being on. I'm sorry that we had some technical difficulties and she was only on for a brief time, but we had her on much longer on the previous episode. And It's always a pleasure having
Tatiana, stop using Cricket Wireless. No, I'm just kidding.
Am I right? We're also happy to have had on Philip Farah of Fermat. Go to fermat.org to check out more about that. And currently on the line, we've got Shannon Stallings. Shannon is an attorney from Florida who does a lot of dealings in as far as cannabis-related laws. Shannon, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, guys.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate having you. I didn't really have much of a bio or anything for you, so tell us about yourself and then tell us about the work that you do.
Okay, so I am a criminal defense attorney. I was a public defender up in Brooklyn for 4 or 5 years, and then ended up kind of coming down south, back to my home south, to the small town of Apalachicola, Florida, where I'm practicing criminal law now. So I've kind of gotten to see the way that our justice system works, both in the big city and in small town, rural America, and it is a little bit disturbing. Because of that, I've kind of gotten involved in the cannabis legalization movement. And here in Florida, I helped draft a proposed ballot initiative which would amend the Florida state constitution to entitle adults aged 21 years or older the right to possession, cultivation, and use of cannabis.
You know, Shannon, when you were talking about that ballot initiative, you kind of broke up there. Will you just repeat that last part for us?
Sure. So we are trying to amend the Florida state constitution to permit any adult over the age of 21 to possession, use, and cultivation of cannabis. We've got to collect a whole bunch of signatures in order to get it on to, we're hoping for the 2018 ballot at this point. But we think we've got kind of the right idea in terms of ensuring that we protect the freedoms of our Floridian citizens.
Absolutely.
If that stuff's not already in the Constitution, it should be called a constipation because it's full of it.
That was good. That was like your second gem tonight. Usually you have a lot of
lame ones. I know.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what a fake gem was, like a rhinestones.
There you go.
But good job, Danny. Well, I want to talk more about that here in a moment, that proposed legislation. But I want to first ask you, you're a criminal defense attorney and you have been for many years. How did that lead you to the area of cannabis legalization in defense of those charged with cannabis crimes, basically? And then what was the different sort of an atmosphere between your experience in New York City and your experience in Florida?
Okay. So I don't think anybody can be a defense attorney in our system and not realize that there is a huge problem with the way that we handle drug cases, or the fact that we handle drug cases at all. I mean, in Brooklyn, we would have arraignments, which is where defendants come in and it's the first time that they get to see a judge. They've generally been held in for 24 or 48 hours, and they are desperate to get out. And consistently, you just see over and over and over again, kids and young men being brought in on drug charges that are, lots of times don't hold up when it comes to, any kind of scrutiny down the road. But it's enough to kind of pull them away from work for at least a day, most likely more, humiliate them, handcuff them, feed them bologna sandwiches and a smelly pen,
Yeah, I've been there. I know what it's like.
Yeah, it's no fun. So, when I was in Brooklyn, I remember there were basically probable cause statements, allegations that were to the effect of this individual was seen with a large amount of cash in a high crime area, right? And that was supposed to be enough for that person to be arrested, right? And often that was a person of color. So I think for me, there was a definite appreciation of the fact that this is a systemic problem, right? That this is not just you can tell stories of isolated individual injustices, but something much bigger is going on and it's consistent throughout the entire country. And so that brought me to wanting to find out what maneuvers can be made to systemically address that problem. And cannabis legalization has so much enthusiasm and support behind it. It's such a great opportunity for me, I think, to illuminate greater criminal justice issues that go along with that.
Yeah, one step at a time, go from marijuana to the other drugs from there.
Right.
Go ahead.
It just highlights kind of what we're thinking about. Like you, Danny, I think you said, you made the joke about if it's not already in the Constitution, what is the good of the Constitution then? I mean, I think with, freedom of religion and freedom of speech and, all of these things that our federal Constitution protects, what's implicit in that is that you have freedom of thought, right? And, it didn't have to be said when the Constitution was drafted. It was understood. But now that we have all of this kind of warfare on technology and warfare on drugs, I think it becomes more important to express those protections.
And also, like the rules of evidence, they only apply to whoever's being tried or whoever's being charged. The rules of evidence don't apply at all to the court. It seems like if you're looking at plain view doctrine or fruit of the poisonous trees, you can compare that to the Ross Ulbricht trial. Mm-hmm. Fruit of the poisonous tree. All that evidence should be gone, but no, it just doesn't apply, not to the government.
Yeah. I think that most people don't actually realize how skewed the system is, and I think that when people do, you're right, they come in, they get introduced to it on an individual level. And by that point, they're already clobbered, the system is there and it's already against them. So, but one of the reasons I think for that is kind of a failure of our judiciary. I mean, I think the judiciary is really supposed to be there to protect the individuals from that kind of governmental onslaught. And I think that they have just like fallen down at their jobs and just become a branch of the executive. So
I kind of agree with that. That's a good way of putting it. You know, the division of powers was supposed to keep the concentration of power from becoming too great and was supposed to aid in protecting our rights. But clearly that's broken down, whether it's, cannabis crimes and their enforcement, or, FISA courts and the Patriot Act. A lot of these separations of powers have basically broken down and merged into one, and it's a very scary thing. And, you made another good point about both of you about, how, if it's not in the Constitution, kind of, it seems not to work, or at least, it seems like historically, if it wasn't explicitly expressed, then it was understood it was a right of the people, a right of the states or whatever. But it seems to be more and more, as the government encroaches on our liberties, we have to explicitly express the fact that it should be a right for individuals to consume cannabis or to do a variety of other things. And, I'm not sure what it will take to really get that going. Well, I wanted to ask you too, real quick. Actually, we're coming to break, so I'll ask you on the other side. But I want to get into, among other things, what you mentioned about the dubious probable cause concerning poor and often minority people in Brooklyn having lots of cash and being in a high crime area, and that was enough probable cause. I'm sure there's other dubious forms of probable cause that were used, and not to mention dubious, faulty procedural methods that were used to convict somebody or at least charge them. So we'll talk more on the other side with Shannon Stallings, criminal defense attorney. So stay tuned.
Now.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Oh, for the longest time. Oh, for the longest. If you said that Bitcoin was my life, I would tell you. Show enough, show you right. What else can I do? I'm so inspired by you, and I'm just holding for the longest time. Once I knew my stocks and bonds were gone, I knew Satoshi Nakamoto was the one.
Welcome back to the Crypto Show, to the lovely sounds of Zhao Tong. That's ZHOU-TONGED. You can go to ZHOU-TONGED.com to hear more of his Bitcoin parodies. We're mentioned in one of the songs because we're cool like that. And he's been a guest on the show before.
We're what? We're cool?
Well, not really. But
we're talking about Bitcoin. We're nerds.
He pitied us enough to do that.
We want to be nerds anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But want to be nerds. That's sad. I don't even know what to think about that. But check out his work. It's really great stuff. Great vocalist, very talented lyricist and parodyist, or whatever the noun would be for that. But we're talking with our guest, Shannon Stallings, of the law offices of Shannon Stallings. She is a criminal defense attorney who has worked in Florida and in New York, dealing a lot of the time with cannabis-related cases, which isn't surprising because, as she kind of alluded to, well, she alluded specifically to the fact that a criminal defense attorney will not, practice long without discovering how twisted and corrupt and abused the system is, especially with respect to cannabis laws. But, the fact that a lot of people that are going to be defended by these attorneys are going to be there for cannabis-related crimes because they're very common. And we're going to get to some of the discussion, the ballot initiative that she mentioned coming up shortly, among other things. But I wanted to ask, Shannon, you mentioned that specifically that in Brooklyn, probable cause would sometimes amount to having a lot of cash and being in a high crime area. Tell us more about that. What are some of the other dubious aspects of probable cause that were used to charge people and arrest them? And what are some of the other maybe procedural things going on that were shady that also led to charges or convictions that maybe shouldn't have happened?
So I think a large problem that is currently pending in the criminal justice system is a procedural one, and it has to do with confidential informants and the use of them by law enforcement, whether that's local law enforcement or federal law enforcement or both. I think largely those informants can be insufficiently monitored, and you hear kind of repeated accusations that individuals have been entrapped by them. Now, in terms of what our entrapment law means, it's not always easy to establish that. And by the time you kind of get to the point of being able to establish that, somebody has really been drugged through the system, their whole life pretty much ruined. But, any system that bases itself on trusting people with known drug addictive behavior, trust them to basically act as law enforcement in order to get themselves out of trouble is going to be, of questionable efficacy, I guess.
And not to mention they're supposed to follow a certain chain of custody. How are they going to prove that these various people took the marked money or whatever into whatever place it is, and they bought this amount of drugs, and they didn't have that on them to buy themselves out of the trouble.
And there's a conflict of interest. And if these informants were a regular witness in any other trial, they would have zero credibility and might not even be admitted onto the witness stand because they were severe drug abusers.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's kind of what I keep finding or being concerned about is it's bad for both, right? I mean, because what you do is you have these law enforcement officers that are basically using down and out drug addicts who are at, rock bottom, and instead of offering to help them, to take them in and get them treatment or, whatever could actually change and improve their life, they're taking them and making them work for them, right? And giving them...
They're using them as bait.
Yeah, putting them in danger. I think frequently, if not openly endorsing, then implicitly permitting drug usage in the course of their work, right? I think the informants are referred to in a negative manner by law enforcement. So, it's not good for the informant.
If the police are referring to them negatively, it may be because the informants actually have more power than the police. And I know personally of a situation where someone was kidnapped by an informant, and then she called the police. And when the police came, they just ignored her because he was an informant. He was far more important than whatever her complaint was.
That's crazy.
She was a complete victim by a police informant, and they're like, so?
That is nuts.
A whole army of cop cars show up for this kidnapping, and yet, that's one of our informants.
Oops.
Yeah, he's
Let
above
him go, or
he's
whatever.
above the law. Let's just forget all of this.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really scary. And all these deals, they're made extrajudicially. So it's not like there's a judge looking over these things and making sure that things are going the way that they're supposed to. I mean, deals are just being made all over the place without appropriate scrutiny, I think. And that's terrifying. You also have, these informants will make a ton of cases, right? So, and make lots of money off of these cases. So, you're not just talking about somebody who's maybe setting up one or two people and then their credibility may be less in question. You're talking about, setting up 30 and 40 people in rural areas. It is.
And not only that, and what they do on top of this is what you're talking about, where they use these informants for multiple cases. It's kind of like Uber or something. They get a rating system as they go further, and they've created more cases like, oh, this guy's reliable. He's a lying piece of crap, but now he's reliable because he's laid a bunch of lies on more and more people.
Wow.
The more you lie, the more reliable you are.
Right. And then the more they're going to protect him, right? Because they don't want, if his credibility is blown in one of those cases, then it's going to be blown in all of them. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's what you're saying. That's
they'll come back. They need that credibility on him, because then they can come back later on and say, like if a dirty cop, a cop is shown to be dirty, they'll go back and look at all the cases that he's been involved in before.
They kind of have to cover for the informant because all these perverse incentives that are created. That's crazy.
Right. And then you combine that with civil asset forfeiture, right? Which
now we're talking.
Which permits law enforcement just to take your stuff when you get arrested. And it puts the burden on you then to basically demonstrate that it was not involved in illegal activity.
That's a nice Hummer, mister. I think it looked really good at the police station.
I think get my old trusty informant on that.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about a minute and a half till break. Well, speaking of civil asset forfeiture, we'll talk about other stuff on the other side. Have there been any major challenges to it? Because to me, it just clearly seems like outright theft. And I know that it's not just local police who have a hand in it, but even state and federal agents. Like, what's being done on that front?
Okay, so there was I don't think a lot. I mean, I know here in Florida, Rick Scott just signed a law that was supposed to limit their ability to seize assets for people who had not been arrested, which, I mean, it's something, I guess.
Yes.
But there are relationships between the federal government and local law enforcement agencies, and it's called equitable sharing asset forfeiture. And it's basically where if local governments contribute to what ultimately becomes a federal case where assets are seized, then the local law enforcement will be given a cut of those seats.
You know what? I actually have some audio of that occurring in a courtroom in Gonzales, Texas. One of our producers here at the network actually sent me the audio. He was in the courtroom, or I don't know if it was a courtroom or if it was a meeting of the law enforcement, but they gave all of that and tells how it works.
We'll talk about more about that on the other side. We're talking with Shannon Stallings, criminal defense attorney. We'll be right back.
India's snake charmers face dangers every day, but that's nothing compared to the wrath they face from animal rights activists. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll be back in just a moment to tell you why 1,000 snake handlers have taken to the streets to protest.
Your search engine is watching you, recording all your searches and creating a massive database of your personal information. That's creepy, but it doesn't have to be that way. Startpage.com is the world's most private search engine. Startpage doesn't store your IP address, make a record of your searches, or use tracking cookies, and they're third-party certified. If you don't like Big Brother spying on you, start over with Startpage. Great search results and total privacy. Startpage.com, the world's most private search engine.
The Snake Charmers Federation of India is a coalition of thousands fighting for the right to perform street shows with live snakes. I kid you not. An amazing 800,000 Indians make a living from their craft, which is handed down from father to son. When India passed a Wildlife Protection Act that outlaws the ancient practice of snake charming, 1,000 snake handlers turned out to protest. About 20,000 people are now in jail for defying the ban. But it turns out the charmers aren't quite as brave as they let on. Animal rights activists say they often sew snakes' mouths shut, remove their fangs, or destroy their venom glands to make them harmless and defenseless. That's not charming at all. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht. More news and information at CatherineAlbrecht.com.
Chemtrails.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. Been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian. Been shouting at leaders who claim to be listening. And the pendulum swings from the left to the right. Its momentum increases the need for the fight. Like a moment of blindness and a lifetime of sight. And I am caught somewhere in the middle. I saw a president blind to the needs of his people. Saw a camel that passed through.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely Sunday, April 17th, 2016, here on Logos Radio Network. Brought to you as always by our sponsors, Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvements, Carl's Jr., and Crypto Compare, with the Crypto Show News Minute twice each episode every Sunday, brought to you by Crypto Compare.
May not actually be sponsored by Carl's Jr.,
but we wish we were. And we're talking with Shannon Stallings of the Law Office of Shannon Stallings, and we'll shortly get to the ballot initiative that she helped propose in Florida. You can go to Floridiansforfreedom.org to check out more about that. But in the meantime, I wanted to discuss with her what we were discussing before interrupted by the break, which is probable cause. Before I ask her my next question, I just want to comment that what she was talking about concerning informants is very eye-opening, and it just shows how corrupt it is. There's a lot of perverse incentives, conflict of interest, and just absolute corruption involved with these informants who have no credibility, would otherwise not have credibility, legally speaking, in court cases, and are just in cahoots with the cops for setting people up. And it's a very disgusting affair. And of course, though, it's how much of the cannabis enforcement relies on is these criminal informants. And of course, the same with terrorism. The FBI relies on their criminal informants to concoct terrorist plots and then help the FBI bust those same plots that the FBI created. So, the MO is pretty rampant throughout much of the law enforcement system. But we were talking about probable cause initially, how it only takes a large wad of cash, probably not even that large, and just being in a criminal area to be probable cause, which is, to me, is ridiculous. But Off air, you had mentioned, drug sniffing dogs and probable cause. Tell us more about that.
Well, again, this is another one of those situations where you just keep seeing it come up that they're using canines basically as an excuse to search anybody's car that they want. I'm not convinced that the dogs are reliable in what they do, but they are deployed frequently. I mean, we have situations here where, I live in a tourist area, and officers have been known to just walk their dogs around the parking lot while the tourists are here, trying to enjoy their vacations. So it's kind of terrifying, I think, in that way. And the Supreme Court has given a couple decent rulings. There was one particularly where they said that an officer could not bring a dog up to a person's home and, sniff the door and then use that as justification for entering the home.
Hasn't there also been cases where the officers actually prompt the dog to indicate?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. What those prompts actually are. I mean, I'm kind of the opinion that these dogs are very easily manipulated, and I think that they're a lot more inaccurate than we actually know. But the problem is that you don't really get to test all of that stuff unless you're putting your client in jeopardy. So. I think when I was in law school, I did work with the Innocence Project. And I think one of the best things that Barry Scheck and the Innocence Project have done is that not only have they, had all of these exonerations and proven that people were wrongfully convicted, but then they've taken that and turned it into numbers and tried to find out what the causes of those wrongful convictions were. So like jailhouse informants is a major cause of wrongful convictions. And so for the first time, we're able to actually point to data that shows that these things are wrong, right?
Like someone wouldn't say anything to get out of jail.
Yeah.
Break.
But or eyewitness identification. People think that if somebody points you out, that you are done for. That is 100%, and that's just not true. You can, there's lots of good study and evidence now about how bad first person eyewitness identification is. And I don't think any of that work would have really come out had it not been for those exonerations with the Innocence Project.
Yeah, especially with things like social media. Everybody, recognizes everyone. You look familiar. Well, yeah, I have like 87,000 friends. So.
Yeah. No, and it's, and the thing is, like with the eyewitness testimony being, studies have shown that it can be very unreliable. But more than that, you don't have to have these studies to know that, like kind of what Danny was implying, like someone can just be like, okay, I got to pick somebody to get out of jail or to reduce my sentence. I'm going to pick this guy. Like you perform a simple thought experiment, knowing human nature at all, and you can see the potential huge pitfalls with that sort of relying on that sort of evidence.
They're also like in these lineups, they're also well known to, are you sure it's not that guy? To try to lead.
They're leading
people.
Exactly, which would not be allowed in a court of law. Right. And that's why it's so ridiculous. Yeah, it's crazy. And I just want to add, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to add to, with the dogs, you can't talk to dogs. They can't confirm for you like a human can. Oh yeah,
your
I
dog
smell
must
marijuana.
Be dumb. I talk to my dog all the time.
Well, that's different. Your dog was
extremely smart. Yeah,
under subject of CIA experiments, but no, but it's not reliable. It's presumed to be reliable. It's you use the word, I think, terrified when you talked about police bringing these dogs around tourist areas like where you live, and it's an intimidation tactic more than anything. Not just generally, but when someone gets pulled over, the threat of the dog, which everyone thinks is, absolute, unbiased, objective evidence, and it's not. And then, of course, I just want to relate real quick my own anecdote. When I was in Mexico last year on my way to Argentina, there was a salad in my bag. And we went through this one sort of checkpoint in the airport where they had a drug sniffing dog, and the drug sniffing dog came and smelled my bag, and they tagged me as a potential drug suspect because the dog smelled the salad. And guess what? They found no drugs because there weren't any, and that was a false positive. And that to me is proof right there that it's faulty. And as you say, now instead of being anecdotal, we have statistical evidence that we can use to show that it's faulty.
If I was a cop, I would harass you too just for being a vegan. No, right? I'm just kidding.
But in the court's position on it, I think it's improving. But the problem is that they said that these, having the dog walk around, that it's not a search, right? That's what the fundamental problem is. But it's intrusive, and it is what they use to justify a thorough, search. but I guess their position is that because all these dogs are supposed to be identifying is something that is illegal, then it's not actually a search.
Well, and that's a circular argument because if you assume that all they're identifying is what's illegal, then therefore every time they sniff something and confirm it, it's something illegal. But there's no reason to believe that only what they sniff or identify is illegal stuff, because obviously dogs can sniff salads or whatever.
Maybe you should carry dog treats with you just for
I know. Well, exactly.
To disclaim the probable cause.
That's exactly it. Exactly.
And you were asking earlier about probable cause stuff. I did think of something else that I thought you might be interested in.
Yeah, please.
Bulges in New York. Because gun control is much heavier in New York. And so that would be a common write-up or descriptive that was given of a client, was that he had a suspicious bulge, the implication being that it was a gun. And they would then use that to justify, stop and frisk and then go from there.
So the cops are accomplishing this by walking around with pornography. But no, I'm just kidding.
Something very disturbing about that. Well, we'll talk. We're coming to break with Shannon Stallings of the law firm of Shannon Stallings. We have one more segment. She's been very gracious to answer our questions and put up with us. We'll talk about the ballot initiative, among other things, in the last segment. So stay tuned here on The Crypto Show. We'll be right back.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show. This is our last segment with Shannon Stallings of the law office of Shannon Stallings down in Florida. And we're going to finally get to discussing the ballot initiative that she helped to craft here momentarily. But I wanted to kind of wrap up our discussion of drug sniffing dogs and probable cause. And actually, Shannon, I had mentioned to you a Supreme Court ruling that I think I got mistaken on. I think I know what it was about, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Was there a Supreme Court ruling in which they determined that an officer can only hold you or detain you long enough to perform his expected duties in pulling you over and detaining you? Like, he can't hold you long enough to get a drug sniffing dog unless he has probable cause. So like a lot of officers will pull you over for a speeding ticket, and they'll try to imply that they want to search your vehicle and threaten you with dogs, but they can't do that without probable cause. Am I totally making this up, or was there any sort of Supreme Court ruling on this?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is definitely true. They are able to pull you over, but if they have written a ticket and they're done with whatever the basis of the stop was, they're not supposed to hold you, be able to detain you for a longer period while the canine arrives. And then you kind of get in a dispute over how long is appropriate, how long can they hold you. But it's pretty much once they've written you the ticket for your taillight being out, then you're supposed to be on your way.
And so I guess this was abused enough that the Supreme Court felt it necessary to clarify it. Is that right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think this kind of gets back to our law enforcement agencies starting to structure themselves as for-profit entities, and the canines are a very useful tool to make numerous drug arrests. When you have that combined with the fact that they can seize a car if they can, demonstrate that it was involved in the criminal activity. You combine that with the court costs and fines, and for-profit prisons. You've just got the makings of a big, opportunity for overreach. And I'm afraid that that's what the dogs are part of. They're just an opportunity for law enforcement to make additional arrests, create problems that wouldn't have existed without it. And then they have to justify their existence. I mean, they're paying for these officers to work with these dogs and to get the training and to get all the goodies that go along with it, the canine car and all of that. So they have to use them and make some kind of arrest in order to justify that expense.
So in a discovery situation, would you be able to like request the audio from from the police radio to verify that they didn't hold somebody extra long, like how they have to do the NCIC check and all that? Once that's done with, they should that should have happened in X amount of minutes, and there should be a record with the camera that this didn't occur. Have you had a situation where that's came up and you've been able to prove that they didn't follow procedures to prove the case?
I mean, that is true. You can definitely get all that. And that's going to happen at an evidentiary hearing prior to the trial. So yes, hopefully, but it's funny how often the technology doesn't work when it might hurt law enforcement.
Oh, well, yeah, there is always convenience.
Yeah, convenient failures, absolutely. Well, I want to switch gears and talk to you about something that I know is really important. You mentioned Floridiansforfreedom.org, which people can check out, and it concerns a Florida State Constitution amendment to allow possession, use, and cultivation of cannabis, and will hopefully be on the 2018 ballot. And if I'm not mistaken, you were involved in drafting this proposed bill. Tell us more about that.
Okay, so I'm with Floridians for Freedom, and our basic approach is that we are trying to start from a position of freedom, as opposed to trying to establish a more regulatory approach. In Florida, we're lucky because citizens can actually amend the Florida State Constitution. And one of the great things about our federalist system is that states are pretty much unquestionably entitled to provide their citizens through their constitutions with broader liberty protections than the federal government. So, for example, up until 1982 here in Florida, no one was allowed to videotape within somebody's home without the owner's permission, right? And that ended up changing down here. But there is a fertile ground, I think, for states to be able to take the opportunity and empower themselves by creating broader protections for their individual citizens through their state constitutions. So that's what we tried to do. There's another proposed ballot initiative that aims a little bit more towards the regulatory structure. So they try and they describe it as treating cannabis like alcohol. But the format of it is that they're basically creating pages of laws that are to be put into the Constitution that address all kinds of things like whether the individual has good moral character. So our position is we want to avoid putting regulation in the Constitution. We want to go back to the core principles of this is a human right. It should be an individual liberty, and it should be protected by our state constitution. I think one of the strengths of that approach is also that it could arguably ensure that state officials do not corroborate with federal officials in furthering prohibitionist policies within their state.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's a big part of the corruption and just a big part of what perpetuates the war on drugs is this, mutual aid and support and involvement between the federal, state, and local law enforcement, and countermanding the will of the people. In places like where it's already happened and become more or less legalized, California, Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. I have a friend who lives in Colorado who said that the DA made rounds earlier this week and busted a lot of people, and it's just a total violation of human rights. The will of the people was spoken in that state. And the federal government just came in and stomped all over it. And it's totally contrary to the federal constitution and to any concept of human rights. And it's ridiculous. But just to clarify, the initiative that you're talking about, so the people can actually vote on this. It's not the legislature. The people would be voting on this, right?
That's right. So we have to get 68,000 signatures on the petition. And then if we do that, then we would go up in front of the Florida Supreme Court for review. And so the Florida Supreme Court would have to say that it satisfies certain legal requirements. And then we have to get about 680,000 signatures in order for it actually to get on the ballot in 2018. At which point the citizens would be able to vote on it. And if it got 60% of the vote, then it would become part of the Constitution.
Wow. I mean, that's encouraging. It's a rough road, though. So the second round would require 680,000 signatures?
Yes. Just a small number.
Why does that seem outrageous? How big is the state of Florida?
That is a good question. I don't know the population.
I mean, I know it's probably like, I don't know, let's say 10 million or something, but that seems like an insanely large number of signatures just to get it on the actual ballot, which is not surprising. They're throwing roadblocks in the way, but your initiative specifically, like you said, you're starting from the standpoint of freedom. It would just totally decriminalize marijuana, right? It would not set up a huge regulatory apparatus, right?
Right. It doesn't. What it does authorize is for the legislature to enact laws concerning the purchase and sale of cannabis to protect health and safety. So it authorizes legislation in a limited manner to control basically the trade. But in terms of personal home grow, I think home grow is becoming a really important priority for cannabis activists. It would, I think, go the furthest in protecting that right.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so stuff like you have to be 18 or 21 to purchase or whatever. I mean, to me, I would just let it be completely decriminalized. But, those are small potatoes compared to the huge regulatory apparatus that unfortunately has been set up in places like Colorado. It's still a better situation than, being than prohibition, but not quite the full step towards freedom that I would want. Well, Shannon Stallings, the law office of Shannon Stallings, and of course, you can go to Floridiansforfreedom.org to learn more about the initiative. We have about a minute left. Any final thoughts for us?
I hope that people will go and show their support for it. I think in terms of, Colorado and that, what I get most fearful of are things like plant limits and where you're basically creating a regulatory structure where the government can come into your home. We're providing them with yet another reason to enter my private space, your private space, and interfere with our lives. So if there's any opportunity to avoid that, that's what I'll be advocating, and I hope that people will sign on for it.
I agree. Well, Shannon Stallings, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure having you. Thanks for being on the Crypto Show.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Excellent. Well, we'll have you back again soon. Guys, stay tuned for the next episode and check out Floridiansforfreedom.org.